A brief intro. Many years ago, there lived a powerful ruler, King Agba, leader of the Idala kingdom, a fierce warrior, loved and respected by the people. But there was a problem. He had no son and was on the verge of losing his kingship to the Olowo. The next in command, immediately he summoned all the maidens to come before him in a dance competition so he could choose a new queen to bear him male children. There he saw Ada, a lady of great beauty. He fell immediately in love with her, but she was already married. In a bid to win her for himself, he unalived the husband and married her, and soon gave birth to a son named Azu. Azu, being the seed of great evil committed by the king, was wayward and caused chaos in the kingdom. So the king ordered him to not leave the palace walls until he is a changed man. So this is where our story starts. Azu was very angry. His errant spirit just could not stay within the palace wall. He wanted to be out there on the streets, roaming around with his gang and causing chaos without any restriction. So he planned within his heart to unalive his father and become the next king. But this plot will not be easy because King Agba was a very strong man, toughened by the many years of war. Azu racked his brain for several days until a hideous idea crossed his mind. How about he led some of his gang into the palace at night and they quietly unalive the king? This idea seems very bright to him, but the problem now will be how they were going to be able to breach the palace tight security, perpetrate the act and escape from the palace without trace. And Azu started crafting at his plan. When he was small, there was an old hole under the palace fence that led outside. Well, even though this old hole have been covered by many years of debris and dirt, with a little digging, they can enter the palace. As for the guards, Azu have noticed a particular pattern in their movements and duty shift over the years, and he noted his observation down and the exact location of the hidden hole. He accompanied this with a map of the palace. Since Azu could not leave the palace due to the order from the king, he gave this plan to his trusted servant to deliver to his gang outside the palace. When they looked through this plan, their hearts were filled with joy because since Azu was no longer in their midst, they could not dare steal from the people again for fear of facing their anger. They know if they can unalive the king and Azu become the next king, they would be his right-hand men and enjoy great power and authority. Even though this was a suicide mission, they were ready to go ahead with it. That night, they chose 3 men, the strongest among them, highly skilled in the art of combat, to sneak into the king's chambers to unalive him in his sleep. With fingers crossed, they embarked on the mission that same night. Finding the spot Azu showed them was pretty easy. With little digging and scraping, they were able to open the little hole, just big enough for each of them to crawl through one at a time. And soon they were within the palace walls. And strictly following Azu's description, they were able to invade the surveillance of the palace guard and were soon in front of the king's bed chambers. They quietly sneaked to his bedside, and there they were met with a rude shock. When they carefully lifted his blankets, they were surprised to find the bed empty, and the king was nowhere in sight. They knew something was seriously wrong, and they must leave the palace immediately if they still loved their lives. But when they turned to escape, they were shocked to see the king by the entrance with 2 of his fearsome warriors. They knew they had walked into an ambush. One of the guards were able to sight these men in time. It was he who alerted the king to the grave danger he was in. A fierce fight soon emerged between them, but obviously Azu gang were no match for the king's men who have been tempered by the brutality of war. The fight continued, and soon 2 of the men were unalive due to the injury they sustained during the fight. The third was injured and gasping for breath. The king questioned him.
Who are you? Who sent you? Why are you after my life?
He queried him, but before he could say anything, he too passed on. The king was very furious. He assembled the whole palace, wondering who was after his life. Everyone was panicking and confused. Little did the king know it was his only son that was the brain behind the failed assassination attempt on him. The king did some investigation, but all his query led to a dead end. Not knowing he was looking in the wrong direction, the person who was after his life was right under his nose and tightened his security. He was always heavily guided 24/7 in and out of the palace. Even when he is asleep at night, the entrance to his bed chambers was heavily guided. This made Azu very angry and unhappy. All chances of him usurping the throne was vanishing before his very eyes. Even the ideas of poisoning his meals was out of it, since according to the palace rule, the cooks must first have a taste of the food presented before the king, including his wines. Even though he was very bitter, Azu kept his bitterness to himself. Left with no other option, he did the only thing that will make his father forgive him and restore his freedom back to him, and that was proving to the king that he was now a changed man. Azu immediately started putting up good behavior. He was very polite to everyone in the palace. He showed so much respect towards the elders in the palace that the king could not help but notice the change in his son's character. This made him really glad, not knowing Azu was just putting up this act to gain his freedom back. Everyone in the palace was happy. The prince has turned a new leaf. Out of joy, the king called him one evening.
My son, I am so glad you are a changed person now. Your punishment is over. But in all you do, don't forget you are the son of King Igaba, heir to the throne, and you must put up a character befitting of a prince among the people.
He told him. Azu was very happy. He thanked his father vehemently and left his presence. King Igaba was proud of his son, not knowing great trouble was just around the corner. The next day, the prince left the palace for the first time in months to mingle with his friend outside the palace walls. Unknown to the king, he would not be seeing his son for a couple of days. You see, Azu was still very bitter at his father and was ready to do anything to usurp the throne. No matter the price, he was ready to pay it. So that evening, disguising as a commoner, carrying nothing with him other than a bag of gold, he and some of his gang left the kingdom in search of a dark power that he would use to unalive the king. King Igaba was surprised to not see his son back at the palace that evening. Immediately, he sent some of his guards to comb the spots he usually frequents in the kingdom, but he was nowhere to be found. The king was very disturbed, but he wiped off all his concerns. Maybe the prince wanted more time to himself after staying in the palace for months, so he thought. But the next day, when Azu still did not show up, the king was greatly disturbed, and immediately he proclaimed throughout the land that his son was missing, and he promised a very handsome prize for anyone who could provide his whereabouts. 5 bags of gold, a promise of riches none could ignore. Immediately, all the mighty men in the kingdom all swung into action. They all went in search of the prince. Some were in canoe, searching the riverside, while others spread to the various kingdoms in their search. Meanwhile, Azu knew exactly where he was going. He was in search of a dark sorcerer named Igbudu. Igbudu was a feared sorcerer, widely known throughout the kingdoms for his dark powers and invisibility. Finding the sorcerer's shrine was no easy task. His shrine was right in the middle of the evil forest, a creepy place where even the bravest men fear to enter. But Azu, driven by the lust for instant power and authority, pushed himself to the limit. And after 2 days of their resilience, they came to a little opening, the middle of which was a little dilapidated hut. They approached the broken hut, wondering if they had lost their way. A very old man came out of the hut, withered and very lanky, like he had not eaten for a long time. They were taken aback and frightened, wondering who this mysterious old man was.
Papa, we are looking for Igbudu, the sorcerer. Please, where can we see him?
Azu stuttered, staring at the strange old man in awe.
Ha 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 ha. Azu, son of Igaba, ruler of the Idala people, what have brought you so far away from home to my shrine? I am the one you seek.
He told him, welcoming them into his humble abode. Azu was surprised. The old man knew his name, even though they had not met once. Even more surprising to him was the fact that the old man was the great Igbudu, feared throughout the kingdom for his evil charms. There was a time the king in this kingdom sent a group of warriors to capture him. When he noticed their presence, he simply vanished into thin air and cast a spell on the warriors to sweep his shrine continually for days, until the king sent a special envoy to apologize to him. That was when he released them to go back home. Well, Azu felt disappointed and wondered within his heart if this was worth the risk. The Igbudu he was expecting to see was a very wealthy sorcerer with many attendants, where he kept his thought to himself. Hey, before we jump right back into this story, today massive hug goes to Serena, watching from South Africa, and Cecilia, watching from Ohio. Thank you for your love and support. Please, where are you watching from? Type it in the comment section so I can send you a special greeting in our next episode. Also, like and share this video so more people can enjoy these tales with us. Lastly, don't forget to subscribe to Anita Chocolate. Alright, back to our story. Azu finally spoke out.
Oh great Igbudu, I've come before you with a request. Please give me a charm I can use to kill my father, so I can become the next king without any further delay. Here is a bag of gold. Take this token and in return fulfill my request.
He told him. He presented the gold before him. A wicked smile crossed Igbudu's face. After a while of silent meditation, he replied him,
My son, I don't need your money. I will grant you your request. But in exchange, I must move into the kingdom and assist you during your reign as king.
He told him. Azu agreed, without any further thought. His judgment, overcrowded by the allure for instant gratification. He saw nothing wrong in the sorcerer's proposal. After all, he needed such a strong force by his side when he is king. He thought to himself. The sorcerer gave him a little calabash with specific incantation he will recite in the middle of the night. He told him he must give instruction to whatever come out of the calabash, and whatever he told it to do, it will obey. The prince was filled with great joy and thanked the sorcerer vehemently. The sorcerer gave him an egg.
My son, follow this road. You will see a T-junction. Smash this egg on the ground. You will see yourselves back at your kingdom.
He told him, wishing him farewell. The prince was very happy, not knowing Igbudu had sinister intentions. You see, There was a secret Igbudu was keeping away from the young prince. Many years ago, the sorcerer was not staying in an old dilapidated hut in the middle of the evil forest. He was a very wealthy and well-respected sorcerer living in Idala kingdom. His only son was forcefully recruited into King Igaba's army, but unfortunately, he was unalive in one of the king's many battles. This made the sorcerer devastated and sought for revenge. But when the king got wind of the sorcerer's plot, he was furious and banished him to a distant land, never to return to Idala kingdom. He had been staying in the evil forest ever since, developing his dark powers and waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. And the prince just brought it to him at a platter of gold. Everything happened as the sorcerer told him. Immediately the prince broke the mysterious egg on the ground. They saw themselves back at the river bank of their kingdom almost immediately. Everyone was shocked to see the prince, because by this time the search of the prince was already very intense. Many questions remained unanswered. The people wondered who took their prince, but in all, they were filled with great joy. Back at the palace, the prince cooked up some stories about how a group of unknown men seized him and took him by the canoe to a distant land and almost unalived him. But he escaped from their nets and managed to find his way back home. Even though some part of the story was not adding up, the king actually believed him. He was grateful to have his only son back, and immediately he threw a big party to welcome his only son back, not knowing great trouble was just around the corner. After the whole merriment that night, Azu swung into action. He brought out the mysterious calabash the sorcerer gave him, and immediately he started the incantation as instructed. Immediately an apparition in the form of a big snake came out of the calabash. Azu was frightened, but he quickly comported himself and instructed the snake to unalive his father. It immediately disappeared into thin air. While Azu was wondering to himself if this whole thing actually worked, there was a piercing scream from the king's chambers. He had been stung by a snake. Immediately the snake reappeared in Azu's chambers. He did a second incantation, and the snake crawled back into the calabash. All this while, there was great commotion in the palace, with the guards and everyone running helter-skelter, trying to save the king from the cold hand of death. And obviously the prince joined in the race for the king's cure. Immediately the palace herbalist swung into action. Using all known herbs for all manner of snake bites, they worked tirelessly throughout the night, and luckily the king survived. But unfortunately, he became paralyzed from head to toe. He could hear and see, but he could not move his body, and he was constantly in great pain. The poison from the snake was still moving in his body. The news of the king's strange image soon spread throughout the kingdom. Many felt something was not right. Others said maybe the king had committed a great evil and was reaping the fruits now. In all, something was obvious. The kingdom needed an active king to protect them from the warring clans nearby. And it had been over 2 full moons since the king was struck by the mysterious snake, and is seriously ill. According to the custom of the land, a new king must be crowned to run the affairs of the kingdom in his stead, and Prince Azu was made the new king, much to the joy and jubilation of the people. At least now they have a king to protect them, not knowing they were about to experience their worst nightmare. The leadership of Azu came with many terrific policy changes. Immediately, he sacked all the palace guard and brought in all his gang members into the palace. There they drank from morning till night and served it out to the palace maidens throughout the night. He turned the whole palace upside down, and true to his promise, he brought Igbudu, the sorcerer, back into the kingdom with the sorcerer by his side. His audacity and wickedness knew no bound. Every day, he will send his warriors to go into the kingdom to seize gold, goats, and cattle from the people, both the rich and the poor. Any slight confrontation was immediately met with a severe punishment. And if any chief dared to speak out for the people, Azu would send his mystical snake to unalive the person. The people cried, wondering where they have gone wrong, that the deities have decided to punish them in such a manner. But the greatest evil the prince committed was when he ordered all the virgins in the kingdom to be brought before him, and in one night he and his gang members disflowered over 100 of them. This was a great evil and abomination to the land, and the deities were provoked to anger. All this while, Igbudi the sorcerer was urging him on to his certain destruction. King Igaba was fully aware of his son's waywardness and recklessness. Even though he broke his heart, there was nothing he could do. He watched with painful eyes the result of his own wickedness in unaliving an innocent man and taking his wife. Meanwhile, Azu continued his reckless reign, and in less than 6 full moons, the land was almost turned to a wasteland. The people were suffering extreme poverty because their gold and properties has been seized by the king, and the land was no longer yielding its fruits. Their crops withered, and the chiefs in the kingdom held secret meetings among themselves, and they consulted an oracle as to the reason behind their great suffering and the solution, and there the truth was brought to light.
King Igaba shed an innocent blood and seized the man's wife, who had given birth to Azu. The blood of the innocent man is crying for vengeance. But there's a solution. Before this man died, he had an unknown son. He must be found and made king, so this great evil can be erased from this land.
The oracle told them. The elders were glad that there was a solution to their problem. Immediately they sent some of the chiefs to secretly meet with Ada, the queen mother, to ask her some questions as to what the oracle has revealed. When they told Ada what the oracle said, she broke down in tears. She recounted her own side of the story to them as to how the king unalived Obi, her first husband, and took her in, and the circumstances surrounding her pregnancy to the king. Then she revealed her deepest secrets to them. Before the king knew me, I already had a son for Obi, named Obianuju, but the king was not aware. He was barely a year old then, and that night I ran off with the baby to the riverside, where Unandi the fisherman was waiting in a canoe to take us out of the kingdom. But at the riverside, I noticed the king's men were closing in on me, so I gave the baby to him and urged him to leave while I stayed behind, to buy him enough time to paddle into the darkness undetected. All these years, he has raised him as his own son, and once in a while, I secretly send supplies to Unandi to support them, she told them. This information warmed the heart of the elders, and immediately the chief swung into action and held more secret meeting on the crowning of Obianuju as their next king. While these secret movements were ongoing, the worst would happen. One of the chiefs secretly informed Azu of what was going on. He told him of what the oracle said and the movement of the elders to dethrone him and crown Obianuju king instead. Azu was furious, and he immediately sent some of his gang members to investigate Obianuju, and soon enough they came back with a vital information. He was a fisherman, loved and respected by the people for his kindness towards the aged and orphan. Azu wanted to send his men to unalive him that night, but he had a change of heart. With a sinister smile across his face, he went into his bedchambers and brought out the mystical calabash given to him by the sorcerer. Reciting the same old incantation, the monstrous serpent came out once more. Azu immediately sent him to unalive Obianuju, and the snake once more disappeared into thin air. And that was the biggest mistake of Azu's life. Truly, the snake went on the mission But when he got to Obianuju's hut that night, it was stopped by the ghost of Obi.
Who are you looking for? Go back to your sender.
He ordered it. The snake ringling disappeared back into thin air and appeared before Azu. Azu was happy. He thought his mission had been accomplished, but just before he could say the incantation to return the snake back into the calabash, the snake struck him, filling him with its monstrous venom. Azu screamed in pain and fell on the ground. The calabash was broken and the snake vanished into thin air, gone forever. The palace guard heard his scream, immediately took him to the palace herbalist that night. The whole palace was gathered there before the people. Azu confessed to all his crime, including how Igbudu, the sorcerer, gave him the mystical serpent he has been using to cause havoc, including his failed attempt on Obianuju's life, and he begged for forgiveness. The people were in great shock. They just could not believe their ears. Anyway, the herbalists tried their best to cure him of the snake venom, but unfortunately he could not make it and he passed away. The following day, the news of Azu's death, his confession, and what the oracle said spread throughout the kingdom like wildfire. That same day, Obianuju, son of Obi, was crowned king amidst more jubilation throughout the land. King Igaba, learning of his only son's death and that the son of Obi was now the new king, his heart could not contain this news and he passed away an unhappy man, filled with regrets. As for Igbudu the sorcerer, he was seized by the people. They tied him to a canoe and pushed him into the ocean, where he tossed back and forth until he met his horrible end. The land of Idala was once more a happy and prosperous kingdom. King Obianuju ruled with great wisdom and sympathy. He returned all Azu's stolen goods to their owner in double folds, and there was peace throughout his reign, and his descendants are still the ruler to date. So here bring our story to a close. What do you learn from this story? Share it with us in the comment section below. Thank you for watching today's episode from Anita Chocolate. I have noticed a lot of our viewers are not yet subscribed to this channel. Please, if you have watched this story to this extent, it means you are a big fan. Please click the subscription button if you are not yet subscribed. It really gives me great joy and more energy to create more content like this. Also, don't forget to like and share this video with your loved ones. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our future upload. Please watch this other story on our channel displaying on your screen while waiting for the next episode. Bye.